And then I got to tell you, one of the most random events I ever heard of. I took one look at my assignment and I'm like, what on earth is the Macon flywheel?
What is the Macon flywheel?
This was, as soon as I those words are out of the mouth for a news director, a gentleman by the name of Bob Bale, who's been around a while. He had a previous stint at Moberly and had gone, I think, down to the Lebanon area.
Mm-hmm.
It'd been a bunch of places. But he said, "Oh, I love that one. That's you'll enjoy that."
What is it? Is it a restaurant?
It's the Macon Flywheel is basically just an old-fashioned antique everything type fair. So it is antique flywheels, engines, tractors, just a little bit of everything. It was literally like stepping back in time to the 1920s, maybe.
Okay.
Just about. I mean, these were some folks that were bringing in items that had been used for decades upon decades, and they had been showing these for years. But it was really just unique to hear them talk, and as soon as you start asking questions, as long as they wanted to talk, as long as they wanted to do interviews about what they may have brought to this festival, they would talk 6, 7, 8 minutes about basically that one item and the history it had been in the family.
So these were all various types of vehicles.
Yeah, vehicles are just flywheel engines. They just would gas powered engines that they would fire up, and they'd just be running out in the fields, varying sizes.
Now, are these some of the old engines? I mean, the super old engines where the flywheel gets your momentum, and then you may have a one-cylinder, occasionally popping engine where you go pop, 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 just enough to keep the flywheel going, and the flywheel actually is your motor.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
These were exactly what they were. That was the bulk of what they had out there. But there was a lot of old-fashioned tractors going back to that same time frame. There was also a barn with a bunch of antiques they had in there, different little displays from folks that were crafters. It was a very unique experience, to say the least. But the big draw is they had said the Macon flywheel was this big giant flywheel, blue and red one that was just constantly spinning in this barn.
Uh-huh.
And I was interviewing the festival director, and she had said before I came in there's a gentleman, he's probably about 85, 90. He'd been sitting there in that on that bench watching. He fell asleep because it's just making that constant circular motion. He just got hypnotic and he fell asleep.
Well, if you've ever seen those motors run, I mean, they are so antiquated. Many of them, in fact, I would say most of them that I've seen, they don't even have carburetors because they don't have an actual device that mixes the gasoline with the air. It just kind of drips out from a bowl into the top of the engine. And it kind of, and the gasoline just kind of makes its way down into the combustion chamber. And it's very, very antiquated, but they work. But they're dangerous. If that flywheel comes loose, it'll take your head off.
Yeah, that was the thing. The folks that were showing these were, they were quite content and comfortable just kind of sitting. They would be sitting in lawn chairs next to us, and they were pretty content. Me, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna stand kind of clear of these because I don't know how much I trust them. These people work on them, probably daily or at least very regularly. Me, I don't know what kind of condition these machines are in and what they may do. So
sure,
but it was a neat event to see. It was kind of it was a good, just going to those events is a good fresher course to just kind of see how the station operates at events like these, get familiar with some of the equipment, and that got me then ready to transition once we got into the sports season at the end of August.
So the August comes, you get into the sports season, you do football, you start to do basketball. So you're the sports guy, the new sports guy in the new town with the new job at the new radio station, and then the coronavirus hits.
Yeah.
So what does a sports guy at the radio station in Moberly do when there's no sports?
A lot more news. It's I'm really thankful. I think the biggest thing that KLPW prepared me for in this was the couple times we had floods and having the flood coverage, particularly that one December right before New Year's back,
Sure.
where it was just 4 days of nothing but flood coverage. I think that Thursday on New Year's Eve, I finally wound up doing a story about Pacific passing an ordinance for having folks having chickens in their yards. I'm like, okay, we're finally getting back to normal. But this is a whole. I mean, this is a whole different animal as far as compared to floods. I mean, this is a different animal, and it's gonna. I mean, it already has last week. I think
Sure.
the best thing I read was, and I had been feeling it already, but stories you're typing up right now as a newsman from 2 weeks ago feel like 2 months ago because the situation is so fluid. It's it's a rewarding thing to follow up, and primarily I've been talking to over the phone the school administrators for different areas and how they're dealing with it. From my dad being a teacher at Union Middle School for years, I've got a pretty good grasp of what their mindset is, but it's one of those things. They'll tell me one thing, and then it can be completely different in just a couple days from what they've told me as well. And the same with talking with a couple of legislators I've been assigned up here to interview on a weekly basis.
So I guess it's because there's no sports. Then you're doing a whole lot more news, and then I guess other duties as assigned.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's the unique part this week was having, or actually it was just today. We're speaking that my hours were shifted a little bit with everyone else, just a precaution as far as social distancing, because they had declared the stay-at-home order that so many counties are working on now. They declared that for up here in Randolph County. And we had just had our first case that morning. Still the only case as of right now that we've reported, but that was enough for the county commission to issue that, and that was when the decision was made, because we're corporately owned by Alpha Media in Portland, Oregon, already kind of been encouraging their stations to potentially go remote or to limit hours. So we debated in a meeting what we wanted to do, and we opted to go with shortened hours to where we didn't have as many people within the newsroom, because normally we'll have 6 people at a time in the newsroom, and we're each at our own cubicles, which aren't quite 6 feet either, it should be noted.
Sure.
To where now there's, at max, there's going to be 4 people, and that's at a very brief, not even 15-minute time frame. That's even going to happen.
So as of today, March the 25th, Randolph County is under a stay-at-home order as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I put a timestamp on that, because anytime we mention anything about the coronavirus on this podcast, I have to put a timestamp on it, because in 1, 2, 3 days, it's null and void. Things have changed. Yep. That's how quickly this has changed. Sometimes one day things are changing.
Yep. Yeah, it's that fluid. I'll use an example here. Monday I interviewed Kip Kendrick, Democratic representative out of Columbia, who's the minority ranking member on the House Budget Committee, and is a fantastic interview to deal with. I've learned so much about the budgeting process just from interviewing him during this legislative session. We were talking like, okay, what are you guys? You were unable to get the full budget passed before the recess, and what's the process? And he was, he was at that point on Monday feeling pretty confident, like, okay, we can get back in here at the very start of next week. We might have to, remotely or, work from our offices and, do some kind of like group chat to get the budget done, but we'll get it done. And then, a couple declarations later, and that idea is almost completely out the window now for the House to do that, because the Capitol is shut down to all non-essential personnel right now. And
isn't there one House member who has the coronavirus, I believe, isn't there?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Kansas City representative, and he's again, and that time of talking, he's doing better. But I don't know if folks have seen the picture, but he had requested actually after chatting with Governor Parson to just have a picture of him on the respirator, just to kind of drive home, what the dangers and how dangerous this virus can be if you get it.
Sure.
To drive it home, but it was an interesting conversation. It was a conversation that with an interview that within 24 hours, probably 80% of that interview was just about dated, because everything was changing with this situation.
Well, the sports guy's turned into a news guy. I mean, here in St. Louis, Mike Bush did that. Rennie Knott did that. Now, I guess your goal is, once this whole thing blows over and is done, you'll want to do more sports, of course, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I've had a healthy set of news from my time at KLPW, and actually up here in Moberly, it is more of a sports focus for myself and a couple of the other people in the newsroom. Primarily, the news director focuses on it, and then we'll give the different assignments. But without sports, more assignments come in, and then just basically whoever's free will answer the phone if the calls come in. Like yesterday, I was actually finishing up my board shift, and one of our other primary sports broadcasters was just about ready to be done for the day. He had about 15 minutes left, and the Shelby County Health Department calls with their first positive case of coronavirus. So he was the one on that occasion that had to do the interview there and cut that up and get the story out in a timely manner to our social media and to our website, and eventually on the air. But it's a really good group effort between sports and news as far as what gets turned out, both while the sports is going and now, especially with the significant situation of the coronavirus. Now everyone really chipping in here, there, and everywhere, quite literally.
Well, speaking of conversations, the reason this started up is I'm going for a walk on Sunday, this last Sunday. And it was a rainy, ugly day, but there were a lot of people out walking. People they'd had enough, like I had enough, so it was just time to go out for a walk. And I'm listening to a podcast on my phone, and the phone rings. And the voice on the Bluetooth says, "Call from Colin Schowe." I thought, what? So I picked up the phone. Sure enough, it's you. And so we had a nice conversation. We talked about what you've been doing, and you graciously agreed to do this podcast. Now I'm going to go, and because folks, after you left, probably a lot of folks wondered, well, what the heck happened to Colin? Because I don't know if they announced anything or what. The radio, it kind of works that way. But I wanted to have you on, and we were communicating via instant messenger. And I just wanted to read the last message that I had from you before we started hooking up on this podcast. It was from March the 14th, 2014. And it was a message from you to me. It said, "I understand you're board opping tomorrow's remote. I will be in at 10 to load spots and bumpers for you. Also, can you please remind John we need 2 headphones for the broadcast? Sean says they should have them." So there's some voices from the past. Sean McConnell. Yeah. And that was back when I was doing Saturdays. And were you doing Tradio then, or was I doing Tradio? I think you were still doing Tradio at 10, weren't you?
I believe I was doing trade. I think we were you and I might have been exchanging it back then.
Maybe, because